don't really have description for it. It won't preaching, I can tell you that. Tonight, I'm thankful to have the opportunity to exhort everybody here. Those of you who are here, I am very excited that you have taken out time, and it is, as always, our goal here to edify as to the highest degree, because we know what God's Word can do when it's in you. The transformation that takes place when we leave this place on a Wednesday night, and the opportunities that possibly we would be encouraged to look for throughout the rest of the week are boundless. And that is what we're about each and every time that we're in the pulpit. And I know, I thank Joey for leading that song. I requested that, the idea of going home, just going across Jordan. And if the boat was there and we had the opportunity to go to the other side, how many of us would step in and take that ride? Or as Elijah's case, would be waiting for that fiery chariot and a whirlwind, and or in the beggar's case, the angels taking him to Abraham's bosom. What sweet, sweet thoughts about going to our Father. Tonight, I am going to take off on Joey and Caleb's class and sermon, Joey's sermon and Caleb's class, things that I had been studying and looking at, and it's wonderful how these things dovetail together. And as you can see the first slide, can we talk about you? The real you. And what does that mean? It means I'm going to get up under your skin. Oh boy, how's that sound? No, it's not like that. We're the flesh up in here, and the spirit is the part that animates us. So we have to get past the skin in order for us to be able to really communicate, and also for us to really understand things. So tonight I'm going to start with Paul. 1 Corinthians 15:7. After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles. And last of all, he was seen of me also, as one born out of due time. For I am the least of the apostles, that am not meet to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. You know, a lot of people, when you ask them to do a character study, or you put in front of them 1 Corinthians 11:1, be ye followers of me as I am also of Christ. And you think about Paul and you say, I just can't identify with Paul. There's no way that I'm going to be able to measure up to Paul. I mean, I can't even begin to even start to think about trying to be like Paul. And you know what? I don't even know anything about Paul. That may be your first problem. Because if you're thinking of Paul this way and you're thinking that this is just him depreciating himself, oh, I'm so humble, I'm the least of all the apostles. No. And what we really do when we make that determination, I am going to find out about Paul if it's the last thing I do. Well, I can tell you tonight, it might be one of the first things that you'd want to do, because when you start hungering and thirsting for righteousness, when you start really starting to seek, what does Jesus say? You'll find. When you start asking, you'll be given. When you knock, it will be open. And one of the problems that we sometimes have, the real you is so busy, the real us is so busy, that we could go 10 years being a Christian and never do a study about Paul. And tonight, I want to give you just a bit of a preview of what you would find. 1 Corinthians 9:27. But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. Really? Is there any possibility that Paul's going to be a castaway in anybody's mind? If you're even thinking that he couldn't be a castaway, you don't know him. You don't know what he's dealing with either, and it is revealed. And so tonight, when you hear him say, I keep under my body and bring it unto subjection, Here's Paul, Romans 7:15. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not, but what I hate, that I do. Wouldn't you like to know what Paul hates? Wouldn't you like to know what Paul does that Paul hates? It's right here. In a study about Paul, you will see yourself. You can be so encouraged and so excited upon seeing the real Paul, which is what the Bible always does with his characters, is it not? Caleb's broadcast today was par excellence. I mean, I just could not believe the things that I was getting from that as he depicted these individuals and constantly talking to our brethren throughout the brotherhood, an average of 400 to 500 people watching our school, and telling them, when you read about these characters, their faults are not displayed so that you can judge them and put them in hell. Go around asking, which one of them went to hell? What happened to somebody's daughter? Japheth. Japheth is Ham's brother. Is it Japheth? Jephthah. What happened to his daughter? And it's like the things people quiz themselves about rather than realizing what in the world was going on with this man, what in the world was going on with these people. So here we are. What is it that Paul does that he hates? You know what? I believe when you find this out, you'll be able to feel better about yourself, and also you'll be more inclined to be transparent. Paul's being transparent. God's being transparent by revealing the things that Paul hates about himself and the things that he has to go through when he says, really and truly, he is fighting with his body and he's trying to bring it into subjection because he could find himself falling away just like the individuals that he's talking to. He rebuked Peter. I mean, that ought to tell us that it is possible for Peter and Paul to fall away. One of them had to rebuke the other in front of everybody. I keep under my body and bring it unto subjection because I am afraid I myself might not do the things that I should do, and all of it be in vain that Christ has done for me. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelation, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan, to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. In the American Standard Version, which we recommend, the American Standard Version has, instead of I keep under my body, it says I buffet my body daily. You know what buffet means? A lot of people buffet their bodies, but buffet, oh no, I'm going to I'll buffet, but I'm not going to buffet. Buffet, in 2 Peter 2:20, he says, when you're buffeted for your faults and you patiently take it, there's no reward for that. And when you get yourself in trouble and you go through it patiently, you're buffeted. So look at this. Here's a man who had so much given to him by God, so many revelations. In this chapter, he's telling about a man who was in the third heaven and was given information that he can't even talk about. And Peter says his things are hard to understand. He has this measure of revelation, the measure through the abundance of revelations. There was given unto me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan, to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight. I'm Johnny Robertson. We are here live on What Does the Bible Say? And we want you to know one thing very quickly, and that is how it is that we're getting into your realm. We are on a broadcast station here in Virginia. It is called Star News. It's broadcasting live right now. Our phone lines are open. If you happen to be a viewer on Star News, we want you to know that our phone lines are open, 276-656-2255. You'll recognize that as the call-in line at Star News. And also we're simulcasting at the same time onto YouTube. You know, I have a very exciting piece of information to meet tonight. And, you know, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think it is the case because there are websites out there that are sometimes called clones. They are sometimes, people call them a mirror of another website. And our YouTube basically is running right now at about 3 million views. And I found a site today that I did not know it existed, and it actually has 60 videos. We have 1,800 videos on ours. This has 60 videos. Those 60 videos have gathered 2.8 million views. And so that is a very, very great piece of information for me from the standpoint of it doesn't change anything in regard to my day-to-day living, financially or anything of that nature. It gives me a boost in the sense of how many individuals are getting information that they would not be getting had it not been for this particular website. Bible Portal is what it's actually called, or it's actually says Bible Portal since 2003. Not exactly sure what the home says, and so I'm not going to take the time to go there. But you add that to our views on our own YouTube channel, and that ends up putting us in the 5 million realm as far as views are concerned. And you just think about us. Small congregation in Southern Virginia, we're simply doing what the Bible says to do, and that is we're getting the message out. We're trying our very best to encourage people in our local area. That's basically our primary job, is our local area. We're constantly involved with people in our local area. We have taught many individuals here, taught in the 2 states area. Individuals have obeyed the gospel that were denominational preachers, sectarian preachers. They are no longer doing that anymore. They have realized the truth. And the congregation here is made up of members formerly of denominations. We only have 2 or 3, maybe a couple of families that were not members of the Church of Christ coming in. The rest of them have come out of denominations. And so that creates a huge amount of zeal as a result of you knowing that you were lost and that your family members need the truth, and it creates a lot of excitement. And that's one of the reasons we do these tent meetings. 2-week tent meeting we just finished in Martinsville and had 32 people from 10 different states come out and help us with the door knocking. We're actually training people to door knock, giving them an opportunity to see how it's done, see what literature we're using, see how simple it really is to get the message out. So I think we hit 5,000 homes this past June, and we had somewhere around 5,000 views on our Facebook of the tent meeting itself. You can go to Caleb Robertson's Facebook page, and you can see the tent videos there, all 12 of them. And so that's an asset again, different things that we put out there. So tonight we are going to deviate just a little bit, and the reason why is because we have things that are going on in the churches of Christ, just like folk in the sectarian world. What do I mean by that? Well, the Methodists are just in they're in a conundrum about what to do about the LGBTQ plus community that has overtaken the Methodist Church. It was women pastors first, and then it became the transgender and just the different things that end up wanting to get into religion. And so now they're in a mess. You know, the Baptist Church is going through a tremendous upheaval. Southern Baptist Convention this past year, they have withdrawn from Saddleback Church Rick Warren. Why? Women pastors. And so, individuals watch that and they think, well, you all, Johnny, you and Caleb particularly, y'all pick on sectarian folk and you really don't ever look in the mirror and see what's going on. No, that is not the case. As a matter of fact, tonight, that's exactly what we're doing. We're looking at the winds of change in regard to our own, housekeeping. We have the ability to look at ourselves and see what's going on. This is USA Today. Church of Christ opens doors to musical instruments. How about that? That's Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to be looking at that article here in a bit. The USA Today is noticing the upheaval that's in the churches of Christ. Winds of change certainly taking place. Mechanical music, we split from the piano sect, which would be the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in 1906. It was actually before that, but the government listed it in the census, listed us separately, the Churches of Christ, the Independent Christian Church, and the Disciples of Christ, because of a lawsuit that was brought in New Bern, Tennessee. And as a result of properties being taken from each other, and the government tried to settle that, and they recognized there was such a division that they listed them differently. And so that was about the piano particularly. Well, here we are 100 years later, more than 100 years, 1906, 2006. We're about 25 years later, and what are we seeing? We're seeing Churches of Christ open the doors to musical instruments, and you really do need to know about that, and that's what we're going to do tonight, is we're going to help in regard to what is it that we're going to have to do. Listen, had a person call me from California today, And the reason he called me from California is he saw this video. And there's a video that I put up on Facebook about, it is featuring B.J. Clark, who is the director of the Memphis School of Preaching. It is from 2015. And B.J. Clark is on this particular website, this YouTube channel, and he is really getting down on people like Jeff Walling. Who is Jeff Walling? He is a youth minister from Pepperdine, which is Malibu, California, Pepperdine University. And so why is BJ over in Memphis, Tennessee, why is he getting after somebody all the way from Malibu, California? Well, tonight you're going to hear about that. But that's why I got a call from California. And so the caller was asking me, he said, I listened to BJ on some of the venues that are out there associated with the Church of Christ. And he said, the guys that you all are talking about, you're presenting information. He said, I watch these guys. What should I do? Should I not watch them anymore? I said, no, that's not what we're advocating. What we're advocating is, what can you do about it? How can you help B.J. Clark? Well, someone says, talking about B.J. Clark is not going to help him. Well, B.J. Clark's talking about Jeff Walling right here. Why would he be talking about Jeff Walling? Does he hate Jeff Walling? Jeff Walling, W-A-L-L-I-N-G, has been a prominent figure since the late 80s. Used to be over here in Charlotte, North Carolina, when I first moved into the area. He was a youth minister in a lot of youth rallies, or let's just say this, he was very prominent at youth rallies. He still is. And here is BJ talking about him, calling him a false teacher, and advocating that something need to be done. So that's what we're talking about. So the individual called me, and I said, no, I'm not advocating that you don't watch BJ. I'm advocating that you do what the Bible says and encourage him. How can you help BJ Clark? How can you help In Search for the Lord's Way? Phil Sanders. How can you help guys like this? Phil Sanders is an individual that took over a very large television entity, In Search for the Lord's Way, several years ago from Mac Lyon, who died, and is a favored broadcast by many older people in the churches of Christ, and one of the first ones that got on and stayed on. And so what can you do for Phil Sanders? Well, y'all run Phil Sanders to the ground all the time. That's not really what we're doing. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get a group of individuals, a large group of individuals, to recognize what's taking place so that you don't have to read it from USA Today. You actually would know about it already and maybe be able to put a stop to it before we turn into full sectarian folk ourselves. Now, we're not going to. You might say to yourself, why is it that Johnny and company, individuals that associate with me, why is it that they actually are bringing so much of this up? I can tell you why. The reason why I'm up on this information, who's doing what and who's doing what where, who's associated with each other, it's not because I'm a policeman or a watchdog. It's because I've been doing evangelistic work ever since I began to preach, either out of the United States in the Pacific Islands or here in the United States in a mission area. And what does that mean? It means that I have to go to other churches of Christ to get support to be able to help me do the work that I'm doing up here. Television broadcasts are paid for by people out of here. They assist in that. The tent meetings are help. We get help from people that are out of here. And so what does that mean? It means that I have to associate with lots of churches of Christ. And I am not going to be taking money from churches of Christ that are involved in the era that I'm trying to get rid of in the sectarian world up in here. I'm not going to compromise myself. And so some individuals may say, well, Johnny, I know some people that you're associated with, and I see them in some of the same venues that you're talking about. That may be the case, but it's not because I'm being silent. Any one of them, you can call them up and ask them, does Johnny give y'all a difficult time? Absolutely. Do I broadcast this business? Yes, I do. I broadcast the information that we're putting out here, and the folk that I associate with, they come under fire, and they'll tell you really quick, and sometimes we just name them all. I played a video not too long ago from Telstar, which is a organization that puts up sermons that people do at lectureships, and the sermon that I preached called out all kinds of names over in Portland, Texas, associated with the people that, calling out the people they were associated with, and spared no one. And I have to make corrections myself. That's why I was doing it, because I was involved with Portland at that time. Ephesians 5:11, here's what we're saying for you to do. In Ephesians 5:11 it says, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. So basically, if BJ is talking about Jeff Walling, who is a member of the Church of Christ, and he is involved in these mega large youth rallies, in Tennessee, and they're doing all the same things that individuals in the Southern Baptist Convention are doing. What does that mean? They are using women preachers. They're basically in the process of making that change in the churches of Christ. Then why would he not do something about it? And what was his call? He was encouraging people not to have fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. Is bringing in women preachers unfruitful works of darkness? Yes, it is. Mechanical music instruments that you heard from USA Today? Yes, it is. Then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to do exactly what BJ is doing. But why is it that people are calling me, asking me whether or not they should watch VJ? The reason why is because BJ is now doing the exact same thing as Jeff Walling was. Now, to say that is one thing, to prove it is another. But here's my thing. If it's okay for BJ to encourage brethren not to be involved with Jeff Walling, is it okay for me to encourage you not to be involved with BJ, but rather to reprove him? Well, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get together on what does it mean to reprove them. Then we're going to have to talk about what does it mean to not have no fellowship. How do you demonstrate that you're not having fellowship with another individual or group of individuals? Well, first of all, let's deal with the idea of reprove. I was talking to the gentleman in California. I said, I don't use the word reprove. Do you? In your everyday language, do you use the word reprove? I don't. So I've got to figure out a word that is in the New Testament that is the definition of reprove so that I can show it to a person so they can recognize, okay, this is what it is saying. Well, there it is. In Matthew 18:15, I am not saying that Matthew 18:15 applies to Ephesians 5:11 from the standpoint of the only way that you can reprove a person is go to him alone. That's not what I'm using Matthew 18:15. Matthew 18:15 is a verse that talks about individuals who have problems with brethren privately and how to work that out without having to go public. But you end up going public if they won't hear you. But see, here's the thing that we're getting out of this. The word reprove is translated, go and tell him his fault. The idea of reproving someone, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather go and tell them their faults, or tell them their faults. I don't have to go to them because this is not individuals that have done anything to me. It's not something that I can work out between us. This is not between us. These are individuals that are sinning against the entire brotherhood. They're being opposed by God in these other scriptures that we're going to look at. And we don't have to go to them privately, but we're going here to find out the word, the meaning of the word reprove. It's the exact same Greek word. It means to confute, admonish, convict, convince, tell a fault, rebuke, reprove. In other words, that's the way this Greek word is translated throughout the New Testament. So, here's what we have. Have no fellowship. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, first of all, we haven't defined what is the avenue or the vehicle by which an individual would say, oh, he's in fellowship with me. We're first saying, what is the word reprove, so that we know what to do. Tell them their fault. Okay, here we go. Now, 2 Thessalonians 3:6. We command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourselves. Okay, now we're getting a little bit clearer. Have no fellowship. Well, how do I pronounce to individuals that I'm not in fellowship with them? Now, we command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourselves from every brother that walketh disorderly and not after the tradition which he received of us. So you have B.J. Clark telling individuals not to be involved, your person not to be involved with Jeff Walling. Don't be sending buses with your young people, your offspring, up to Tennessee where Jeff Walling is holding his event. This is basically the way that you do have fellowship with him, you're accompanying with him, and the unfruitful works that he is involved in, you'll end up being involved with them. You will actually be in a position, if you don't know about it, you will be subverted. We'll see that in just a minute. Subverted? Well, what does subverted mean? It's the idea of taking your foundational stance, the things that you should be doing, the basics, you end up having them taken out from under you. You really don't know where you're going. And that's the very reason that we're actually saying this. All of a sudden you go home and you want to have mechanical music because you know, instrumental music because you know Jeff Walling and the people that are involved with him. They are involved with that too. Now someone's going to say, and that is fine. You might say, well, I didn't see any musical instruments at Winterfest. this year in February. I don't know about that. And if you say that and it's true, that's fine. But that still doesn't change the fact that what we're saying is the case. And if you mingle with these individuals, you will end up having musical instruments as well. You will not think that there's anything wrong with it. And I'll show that in a bit. 1 Corinthians 5:11. But now I've written unto you not to keep company. See, now you just found yourself. Withdraw yourselves. Not to keep company. One of the ways that we hinder false doctrine and the unfruitful works of darkness is we don't give them our company. We don't participate in these things in our person, and we speak against it in our pulpits and in our whatever forum that we have in the public. And that's one of the reasons that we're going to be pointing this out tonight. I hope we're going to be very, very clear. I am constantly working on a better way to show you, a more simple way to show you what is going on with these guys and who is involved. And listen, y'all, we're talking about some high-end groups of individuals. When you talk about the 14, 15 colleges that are associated with the Church of Christ, what does that mean? It means they want your children. They are not Christian universities. They are universities that basically tout that they are associated with the Church of Christ, basically have the same doctrine, and they want your offspring. Now, when you're saying that, millions and millions and millions, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. In the case of, let's say, Harding University, one of their last presidents that moved to Faulkner University, $150 million he raised in the time frame that he was there. That's what we're talking about. Why in the world would you think that I can stifle this? Listen, the Word of God is a very powerful entity. And the amount of money that they have cannot harness information that individuals who love the truth can take in and the response that they can have towards it. That's one of the reasons they're spending so much money on these youth rallies. They're working to get your offspring, change their minds about what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do, so that when they get to the university, they won't just freak out as a result of how far off into sectarianism it really is. And that's basically what we're talking about tonight. So who are we talking about? Have no company. If any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, are we saying that Jeff Wall is a fornicator? No. Covetous, I would say covetous. These individuals demonstrate that money is their main goal. They will compromise the truth of God's Word in order to create a larger money chest. And in Peter's writing, he calls it filthy lucre. Paul's writing in Timothy calls it filthy lucre. An idolater, well, are they idolaters? Listen, idolaters don't have to bow down to stone. You bow down to your cause, it becomes everything to you. What is their cause? Well, in Jeff Walling's case, it's Pepperdine University. You know, I could be the same way. I could just, I was telling you about this YouTube find, 2.6 million views, 60 videos that we didn't know were actually out there, that this group was putting up on their website. Ours is 3 million views. And, we could get to the point where we idolize our ministry. What does the Bible say? It's not a ministry, that's a phrase. What does the Bible say? We constantly ask people when they call in, and as we mentioned a moment ago, you can reach us on the Star News call line 276-656-22. Those of you who are in the Martinsville, Henry County area, you know that phone number. Everyone in this area calls into the live talk shows. And so if we're going to compromise, it becomes our idol. And it's just a phrase that we use when we answer the phone. What does the Bible say? Or when we're talking to people about their ideas, we say, well, what does the Bible say? And we have a verse ready, just like we're doing tonight. Now, Titus 1:10. Remember we said a moment ago that we're going to talk about how this affects you when you're involved with these individuals, rather than removing yourself from their company and or reproving them in our venues. For there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision. That was in the days when Paul was dealing with the Jews, whose mouth must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake. How many people go to the venue where Jeff Walling and Pepperdine are in Tennessee? They touted that there were 10,000 individuals there this past year. And we're going to look at the persons who are responsible for that so that you can see who is involved and what their ultimate goal is. How do you see their ultimate goal? You see what they're doing, what they're accomplishing. Titus 1:3. I besought thee to abide still at Ephesus when I went into Macedonia, that thou mightest charge some that they teach no other doctrine. This is how this works. Teach no other doctrine. And the end of the commandment, the aim of that commandment, Paul says, what commandment? Teach no other doctrine, charge them that teach no other doctrine. The aim of that commandment is charity out of a pure heart and a good conscience and of faith unfeigned, from which some, having swerved, have turned aside into vain changing. That's what these individuals are doing. They have turned aside. It is a loving thing for us to do, to charge them to come back, reprove them, tell them their faults, what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Jeff Walling knows that musical instruments are not authorized in Christian worship. He knows that women preachers are not authorized. Well, why is it that he is willing to go to that length? Money, prestige, position, keep themselves where they are as far as their places in the university. 1 Corinthians 5:3. For I verily, as absent in the body, but present in the spirit, have judged already. Why did I bring this one? I don't have to go to you if you are in a setting like what we're describing here tonight. Matthew 18:15 was a situation where individuals were in proximity. One had crossed the other, and they were told to go to them privately. Now, tell the fault. Here's a situation on the other side of this, Galatians 2:11. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. Now, Peter was doing things in a setting that wasn't necessarily where Paul was, but when he had the opportunity, he confronted him. We're confronting these individuals, and you might say, well, you're not doing it anytime in their own place. Yes, we are. We've been to Hardeman on multiple occasions. We've been to Polishing the Pulpit on one occasion. It becomes kind of dangerous sometimes when you're involved with these individuals because they're not about to let you be in a position to reprove them, let their faults get out. So we put out a website with the help of some other individuals that actually is entitled polishingthepulpitera.com. It's actually PTP, Polishing the Pulpit, PTP, Polishing the Pulpit. PTP Era is what it's actually called, .com. You can get on it right now, and you can look at speakers that are on Polishing the Pulpit right now, and you can see the era they're involved in, how you see in the era. The website contains places that those speakers have gone previously and the false teachers that they're accompanying with rather than reprove them. And it is an eye-opening experience. In Galatians 2:12, before that certain came from James, he, that is Peter, did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself. See how that works? Peter actually knew that these folk that had come from Jerusalem believed that you should not company with Gentiles, you should not eat with Gentiles, and that Gentiles need to be circumcised, proselyte. You need to be involved in proselytization of the Gentile race because they are sinners and the Jews are actually not. Well, when they came in, Peter did the exact thing that we're talking to you about you doing, except that he was wrong in doing it because the Gentiles were not as the folk from Jerusalem said they were. They were justified by faith in Christ just like everybody else. The Jews had to be just like Peter was. But yet Peter was saying that he should not company with them because they had not been properly proselytized. In other words, they had to be circumcised along with the gospel of Jesus Christ, obeying the gospel of Jesus Christ. So what did Peter do? Paul did. He withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. We withstand people on a regular basis to their face. We go to their venues. Very difficult these days. And why? Because look, here is how this is playing out. If someone doesn't wake up and people don't start participating in this, this is going to be the continuing headline everywhere. The Churches of Christ opens doors to musical instruments. In Nashville, Tennessee is where this particular article is. I'm not saying it came from Nashville, but that's who they're highlighting. There's a congregation in Nashville. Let's read a little bit of it. Brentwood, Tennessee, a Nashville area church, is starting something radical, at least by Church of Christ standards, allowing musical instruments at one of its Sunday services. It's such a switch for Otter Creek Church, a 1,800-member traditionally a cappella, which basically that means we're singing hymns with our voices alone, a cappella congregation that is a leadership team, that its leadership team spent months deciding a strategy and will take months more putting it into place. About 20 of the 12,000 Church of Christ congregations nationwide offer instrumental music, said Carl Royster, author of the survey published by Nashville-based 21st Century Christian Publishers. The first handful started making the change about a decade ago, including popular megachurch leader Max Lucado's Oak Hill Church in San Antonio. Some face backlash from other congregations. Even now, 13 years after the branch, that's Farmers Branch Church of Christ, a multi-campus Church of Christ congregation in Dallas, introduced instrumental music. Google searches on it, and senior pastor Chris Seidman. Don't forget Chris Seidman. We're going to be talking about Chris Seidman. I don't have any opportunity. There's not going to be a situation where we're going to be involved with Chris Seidman. Yes, you are. BJ's going to be involved with Chris Seidman. Phil Sanders is going to be involved with Chris Seidman. What? Seidman? How in the world is that going to happen? Let's go on down the line. David Shannon, Chris Seidman. What? How is it that you're putting all of these individuals that folk have high regard for, folk that are going to PTP, Polishing the Pulpit, they are involved. Now, you're going to ask, so has any of those individuals been to Chris Seidman's church, Farmers Branch Church of Christ, or the Branch Church as they call it now? I doubt it. Have they been on venues with Chris Seidman? I don't know about that, because I don't know who all went to Winterfest this year, but I am going to show you some individuals that went to Winterfest, and if they did, yes, they were with Chris Seidman. What? One-on-one? Yes. Oh, no, that's not possible. No, it's possible you're not paying attention. That's what's not possible. Chris Seidman yielding, if you're looking at Google searches, you'll find Chris Seidman, the searches yielded scathing denunciations. A lot of churches from our hedges cut us off, said Chris Seidman. Well, is that a bad thing? I think that's kind of what it said that we're supposed to do. These people that are swerving and have left the faith, turned aside to vain jangling, it's basically useless talk, useless doctrinal positions that are not going to accomplish what you set out to. That's the meaning of vain. Not able to accomplish, not able to profit. Look, they cut them off. Look, stopped their mouths. If you get to the point where they will not take the encouragement, the exhortation, the reproof, telling of their fault, what do you have to do? You can't keep company with them. You have to withdraw yourself from these individuals. And that's exactly what Chris Seidman said he was suffering. Good. It should be nationwide, brotherhood-wide, but it is not the case, and we're going to show you that now, beginning now. We're going to start with Oklahoma Christian. Now listen, this is where we really go to work, and I think tonight that it's not going to be as difficult maybe as other lessons. When I start talking about lectureships, I know that it is very difficult for individuals to keep up with all of the different venues where people speak. I don't know how many lectureships there are in the United States, brotherhood-wide. I have a video of the past Bible department head at Hardeman saying, sometimes you go to a lectureship and there can be 100 speakers. You look at Polishing the Pulpit, I don't know how many speakers there are, but there are a lot. 50, 75, could be 100, I'm not sure. Keeping up with them is extremely difficult? Not necessarily. We're helping you keep up with individuals that have been on venues where they mix and mingle with the very people that we're talking about. But tonight, we're going to kind of bring it down to a, let's just say, a very motley few. Can I say it like that? Individuals who are just consistently involved in this kind of behavior. Can I start with Oklahoma Christian University? Now, I start with this because of the star that's on the front. Why am I calling him a star? That's what they called him in their Facebook. This is John D. Steiger. He has just left Oklahoma Christian as their president of the university. He's been replaced from somebody from Lubbock University. I forget his name right this minute. It's not a point that we're trying to make. John D. Steiger has been here for quite some time. He's a big fundraiser. He is a regular at Pepperdine. Also, what is Pepperdine? Pepperdine is a watering hole for individuals that use women preachers, use instrumental music, that are community churches, have changed into community churches. They also fellowship the Christian church, sectarian denomination, same thing, sectarian denominationalism. Sectarian is a much stronger word to use than the word denomination. That's what they are in the New Testament, sects. Sectarian, heretics. Here's John D. Steiger, and here is Jace Robertson, Duck Dynasty. Don't you recognize him? Now, look. Let's put this together. Off of website, off of their, it's not actually their website. This is coming from the Christian Chronicle. So the Christian Chronicle is an oracle for all things that go on in the brotherhood. That's what they say. And they're very unable to distinguish the truth from error, and they will put out stuff that would lead you to think that things are one way when in reality they're not. And we're going to show you that tonight. When they are talking about Oklahoma Christian University President John DeStiger interviewing Duck Dynasty star Jace Robertson, where else did the interview take place? Where else would it take place? In the university's duck pond. Why is that? Because this is Duck Dynasty stars. A&E broadcast where the Robertsons get on and hunt ducks and they talk and carry on. So he's a member of the Whites Ferry Road Church of Christ in West Monroe, Louisiana. He spoke during Oklahoma Christian Chapel Assembly today. That's a lie. What's a lie? They are not members of the Church of Christ. Well, how do you know that? They're saying that they are. Who's saying that? Christian Chronicle. Listen, these individuals will publish things like that so that individuals who they will have a flag raise up or a red flag raise up and saying, I don't know about this Duck Dynasty group. Are they, I heard blah, blah, I heard about them, what they're doing, whatever. No, Christian Chronicle gave them a pass there. He's a member of the Church of Christ, Whites Ferry Road Church of Christ in Monroe, Louisiana. Well, is it okay if we have the Whites Ferry Road group actually come in and delineate who they are and who they're not? Is that okay? Well, the first thing you'll see on their webpage when you get on there is, this is how they worship. Ugh. So you're saying John DeStiger opened up the chapel at Oklahoma Christian University to this guy, and this is the way they worship in West Monroe? I may have to call somebody up over there. Call up Jeremy Beller. He was, I'm not sure if he still is, a preaching minister over at Edmond Church of Christ, where Phil Sanders is a member, and the work that he does with In Search for the Lord Way is housed at Edmond Church of Christ. Call up Phil Sanders and call up Jeremy Beller and find out from him. Just say, now, you guys had Jace Robertson, cigar selling, wine selling individuals from Duck Dynasty, and you called him a member of the Church of Christ, and you had him speaking to our young people, many of which are involved with us all over Texas and Oklahoma. I'm saying somebody's calling up and asking Jeremy Bell, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with them. Didn't you read the Christian Chronicle article? They're members of the Church of Christ or Whites Ferry Road. Listen, Whites Ferry Road has been long gone from fellowship with the churches of Christ that are trying to hold to what the Bible actually teaches in regard to musical instruments, the way that we're supposed to worship God, what it is that God has asked us to do when we worship Him. As far as praise is concerned, they have long since departed. And here's a picture of their worship. You see that? That guy back over there with the lights, that's drums. There's a guitar playing guy right here. There's another guy that's got a guitar right behind him. Right behind this lady right here is another guitar, and you got these women up here, and this is the praise team. Well, what are they doing? That's how they worship over there. And not to mention that, if you look right here at the top, you can see the acronym. This is what they go by, Whites Ferry Road Church. They don't have the Church of Christ associated with themselves. They want to be delineated in a different way. They want to be vanilla, is what I call it. That's why you can't identify them. They don't want to have a baggage associated with the Lord's true church, the one you read about in the New Testament. They have long since become community church. WhitesFerryRoadChurch.org. And how do they worship? You just saw it. That's the way they worship. And that is what they want you to think. Somebody might say, well, Johnny, that's not fair. This is their website. And so what does that do as far as your confidence in, number one, Christian Chronicle, number two, Oklahoma Christian University. Listen, y'all, Oklahoma Christian University is not a Christian university, number one, and they are filthy rotten when it comes to their willingness to take your offspring and turn them into sectarian folk. They are turning the young people towards people like Jeff Walling and individuals like Jace Robertson and the Whites Ferry Road Church. They go out of college, they come out of that university and come back to the congregation, the home congregation, and they'll have all kinds of ideas about how to change the body of Christ. And it will end up changing it into a sectarian group that resemble the folk around you. Now, let's move then to Winterfest. Now, was that difficult? Is it difficult? Is there any way you can come away from this piece of information, not thinking that you need to investigate what you just saw and what does the Bible say. What did you see? You saw John D. Steiger, president. That's highest level you can get. He is interviewing Jace Robertson, Duck Dynasty, who is not a member of the Church of Christ. These individuals promote instrumental music on their... Phil Robertson is the patriarch of this group, and Phil is rabid in regard to the idea that he cannot use mechanical music, instrumental music. He is a big-time promoter of it on his YouTube channel, and so they are not friends of the truth. And Oklahoma Christian University, which is not a Christian university, is promoting them big time. So we moved to Winterfest. What was Winterfest? Winterfest is a gathering in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. 10,000 people is what they said this past year. I believe it was in February. I think it's on here somewhere in February. And so here are your personalities. In the first session, Chris Seidman, I told you. Now, who is promoting Winterfest? Well, B.J. Clark was in the beginning, and you didn't hear him. Let's just go ahead and let you hear it. Here's B.J. Clark talking about Jeff Walling and Winterfest.
Our young people don't need to be getting on buses and driving to hear Jeff Walling preach. Why? I'll tell you why. I heard him speak one time in Indianapolis. He was... I want to say this in a Christian spirit, but I want to say it with absolute firmness mixed with kindness. Max Lucado is a danger. Oh, about this, some don't. Back in 1996, on the radio, you've just prayed this prayer, welcome to the family of God. And then Max Lucado having to hear Jeff Walling preach. Why? I'll tell you why. I heard him speak one time in Indianapolis. He was talking to young people. He said, here's what I'm speaking about, knowing God. He said, number one, knowing God has nothing to do with keeping rules. People don't need to be getting on buses and driving to hear Jeff Walling preach.
What does Jeff Walling preach? Well, BJ said that he was preaching in Indianapolis saying that knowing God has nothing to do with rules. Well, I don't know about that. I don't doubt it, but the information that we have for you tonight is not hearsay, he said, she said. Take a listen.
Why? I'll tell you why. I heard him speak one time in Indianapolis. He was talking to young people. He said, here's what I'm speaking about, knowing God. He said, number one, knowing God has nothing to do with keeping rules. I went to him after saying, oh, we're going to Winterfest and we're taking our young people to hear this false teaching. They don't call him that, but I know that's what he is. And because he's dynamic and he's able to really speak with great clarity, no one leaves misunderstanding him. Unfortunately, they understand him all too well. And so, brethren, I'm saying with all the love that I have in my heart with which to say it, we have to find the way to stand up and to stand against these false teachers. We do it with love, but absolute firmness. We don't back down. And why is it so? Because if we don't do something, an entire generation to come is going to be, in generations to come are going, is it so? Because if we don't do something, an entire generation to come is going to be, in generations to come are going to be tainted by the work of these men, unfortunately, for generations to come. And we've got to stand up right now and put a stop to them. If you are here this morning, here's the beautiful thing that I'm able to say. But we have to identify the false teachers because they don't float around in the air unattached to personalities. False teaching is connected to people who are preaching that false doctrine. That's why they have to be exposed.
Exposed. Are we doing something that BJ would be against? Not in his former days, that's 2015. In 2015, he's right in there saying that he's doing that very thing. But here we are today. This is this year, 2023. And this is Winterfest, and there's Chris Seidman. Chris Seidman? Yes, Chris Seidman was the individual in USA Today that was being talked about over in Texas at Farmers Branch, at the Branch Church, who said that 13 years ago, people were calling them out big time. Why? Because they were introducing musical instruments into their worship. Well, he's at Winterfest? Yeah, but we don't have anything to do with Winterfest. Johnny, why are you talking so far away in the sense of doctrinally speaking? Didn't nobody have anything to do with Jeff Walling and Pepperdine University over in Malibu? Well, why is it that Malibu is over here in Gatlinburg, Tennessee? It's because these people west of the Mississippi, that's where California is. Mississippi's running right down into Memphis. They come across the Mississippi River and they come into the eastern part of the United States because this is a very populated part of the United States and one of the largest gatherings of the churches of Christ are in the state of Tennessee. And then down in Alabama, in Georgia, in Texas, all down in Texas west of Mississippi. But they're working on this side of the Mississippi, and they're working very hard. And they got Chris Seidman as first hour. David Skidmore. Who is David Skidmore? I'm going to show more about David Skidmore, but I'm just going to tell you right away. David Skidmore was on the Freed Hardeman lectures this year. Freed Hardeman and Winterfest are right together as far as the dates are concerned, January, February time frame. And so you have people that are leaving one venue and going to the other. And there's David Skidmore on the Winterfest, which is under the control of Jeff Walling from Malibu, California, who is at Pepperdine University. Now, then you have Phil Brookman. Okay, now we just got really personal. So, if it is the case, and it is, if it is the case that David Skidmore was on the Freed Hardeman lectureships this year, David Skidmore is in a youth program that is promoted by Pepperdine. You get on YouTube, there's a YouTube video, I may have it tonight, I may not, where David Skidmore and Jeff Walling are actually talking about their joint participation, helping out with Pepperdine University, and they're using one of him, they call it David Skidmore, the Renaissance man. Well, David Shannon at Freed Hardeman, the president of Freed Hardeman, they had David Skidmore on their lectureship this year. So that puts David Shannon, Freed Hardeman group, with David Skidmore, and you just move them right into Winterfest. They're all in together. I'm going to show you that without you having to connect the dots. But Phil Brookman is the preacher at Memorial Road Church of Christ in Edmond, Oklahoma, where Oklahoma Christian is. And, you know, here's the thing tonight. Phil Brookman has actually been on the Edmond Church of Christ where Phil Sanders is housed. He was just on their venue. Look at this. This is May the 30th, Edmond Church of Christ. Who you want to come here? Phil Brookman, Jeremy Beller, and James Simmons, Rusty Tugman, Wes McAdams. I mean, listen, you need to put this together. You need to tell somebody. Wes McAdams was together with Phil Brookman and Jeremy Beller. Jeremy Beller has basically been all over the place. Phil Brookman is a regular at Pepperdine. And now you see him on Winterfest. What is Winterfest anyway? And there's Jeff Walling down at the bottom. These are individuals who are fine with musical instruments and women preachers. Now, you might say, now, Johnny, let me go ahead a little bit, right quick. And let's see if I actually have this. I just want to make sure whether I do or not. Yes, I do. Okay. Women preachers and musical instruments. So this is Don McLaughlin. Don McLaughlin is the preacher for the North Atlanta Church of Christ. Musical instruments, big time. This is his daughter, Amy McLaughlin. She is a preacher. What kind of preacher? She's a preacher that preaches in a worship assembly over men. There she is on Pepperdine lectureship. There's Bruce McClarty. Who is Bruce McClarty? He is preacher in residence at Freed Hardeman, brought in put on staff by David Shannon. Now, let's go backwards. Now, what were we saying? We were saying just how dangerous and the degree to which these individuals have reached, actually gone down. So what do we have? Chris Seidman, USA Today. Everyone that knows Chris Seidman and knows Farmers Branch Church of Christ, the branch church now, they know that this guy is involved in bringing in musical instruments. They fellowship people that have women preachers. David Skidmore, same thing. He's involved he's actually he's not a staff member in the sense that he's been paid by Pepperdine, but he is a staff minister in their youth program. And then you have Phil Brookman. He is the preacher at Memorial Road. He is in fellowship, in company with Phil Sanders and the crowd there at the Edmond Church of Christ. They're inviting him over in May. And then you have Jeff Walling, who is also on here as well. And this is Winterfest this year. The hour has come. Now, let's look at the information on this particular website. This is, again, Christian Chronicle. Christian Chronicle is going to supply us with information about this year's Winterfest. Well, what is the information? Here's the information that I really want you to see. Dudley Chauncey, Winterfest organizer, was perched above the Gatlinburg Convention Center in the audio-visual booth as the crowd went forward. Now, who is Dudley Chauncey? Dudley Chauncey is a professor of youth and family minister at Oklahoma Christian University. Do you want to know who's one of the organizers of Winterfest? Jeff Walling is in charge of it, and Dudley Chauncey over at Oklahoma Christian is an organizer. He is a professor of youth and family ministry at Oklahoma Christian University. You know, it just doesn't get any clearer than this. These are the individuals that are promoting this particular group and this kind of behavior throughout our brotherhood. Oh, I thought Oklahoma Christian was a sound school. Oklahoma Christian is rotten. This guy, Dudley Chauncey, is rotten. He is promoting individuals who are very happy to get themselves in USA Today because they use musical instruments and women preachers. And I just showed you Don McLaughlin. Well, what does Don McLaughlin have to do with it? I didn't see his name. Well, we can actually thank Christian Chronicle for supplying that information too. Chauncey also changed the format of the service on Saturday night based on the format used during Youth in Action rallies he helped organize in the 1970s. Participants sang the story of Jesus, Walling said. And from joy to the world, they bound his hands in the garden where he prayed. Stephen Maxwell, a minister of North Atlanta Church of Christ in Georgia, led the worship backed by a cappella group, United Voice Worship. Who is Stephen Maxwell? He is the music minister at North Atlanta. Well, what does North Atlanta do? They have a full-out praise band. Now, who did we just put in? We just connected all of these individuals together with Don McLaughlin and his daughter Amy McLaughlin, woman preacher, musical instruments. They're all in here together. They're promoting this kind of stuff. They want their young people to get used to this at Oklahoma Christian. They want them to be involved with the so-called Church of Christ over here in Whites Ferry Road. It's not a Church of Christ. They don't even call themselves the Church of Christ. They call themselves Whites Ferry Road Church. And did you see their musical praise band? And they have women preachers, the whole bit. And these individuals are right in your face. Who brings it to you? Our history includes revivalism preachers riding into town on a horse, said Walling, a longtime minister who now serves as director of Youth Leadership Initiative at Pepperdine University. That's what David Skidmore's on. Youth Ministers Initiative, Youth Leadership Initiative. David Skidmore is leading your youth. Who's he working with? He's working with Jeff Walling. Who's Jeff Walling working with? Who's Jeff Walling not working with? Jeff Walling is on staff at Pepperdine, and we just showed you a few minutes ago what's going on at Pepperdine. Now, tonight I'm going to give a plug for Milton Sewell. The Jackson Sun is advertising past presidents of Freed Hardeman. You got Milton Sewell here. You got Shannon. You've got Gardner, and you got Wiley. These are past presidents. What I have up here, I have up here that Milton Sewell says, you know, when I was president, I said no. What did he say no to? I want you to take a listen to this. This is an interview I had with Milton Sewell. And in this interview, Milton and I talk about whether or not Pepperdine should be allowed at Freed Hardeman. Well, somebody said, well, why in the world are you talking about that for? Because Pepperdine was at Freed Hardeman this year. Well, David Skidmore was there. That's right. David Skidmore is a Pepperdine individual through and through, and he was at Winterfest before that, and David Shannon knows that. Take a listen.
And Marvin Phillips is like, no, I don't even agree with my wife half the time, so, you know, it didn't bother him at all. But, you know,
Sure.
being included, you know, it is causing quite a stir that Jerry Rushford is now, being included in the name list. That would be too far for you, would it not? I mean, 32-year director of Pepperdine?
Sure. I never allowed Jerry to come when I was president here. I don't want that quoted, but he really wanted to come and present here, but I would not allow it. He was just too far off the grid for us.
Off the grid for us at Freed Hardeman when Milton Sewell was president. God bless Milton Sewell for having those kinds of convictions. David Shannon doesn't even have a 16 cousin to that kind of conviction. He's bringing all these individuals in. Who is Jerry Rushford? Right here is an advertisement for Jerry Rushford from Pepperdine itself. Jerry Rushford to present at Harbor Lectures 2022. Jerry Rushford was 30 years as the director of their lectureship. And he wanted to be on Freed Hardeman. Milton Sewell would never let him on. Well, you see how this is going? We're basically showing you the kind, and someone might say, you know, that sounded like it was doctored. It wasn't doctored. When I was talking to Milton Sewell, I was taping the interview. I did not agree to edit anything that he said to edit out. It was an unedited interview, and when he was talking, he is voice on the phone was lower. I simply made it where you could hear it, what he was actually saying. And I know that he was very pleased to hear himself say what many individuals believe ought to be the case, and that is to keep Pepperdine out of Freed-Hardeman. So that's basically what you have. But what do you have now? As far back as 2018, you have David Shannon advertising that Freed-Hardeman University is Winterfest bound. This guy is rotten to the core. He is an individual who is a change agent in the Church of Christ. We know what that means. He is bound to take us off. This is what Titus was being talked to by Paul. Persons who are mouths need to be stopped. They subvert whole houses. Your children are going to come, offspring are going to come back from Freed-Hardeman, and they're not going to think a thing wrong with using musical instruments. They're not going to think a thing wrong with women preachers. And why? Because David Shannon is the type of individual that will change the things that you have taught them all their lives from the Bible. Here is 2020. What does it say? Freed-Hardeman University, February 14th, Winterfest 2020 in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. What a weekend. Thanks, Winterfest, for some great memories. If you were at Winterfest and had a photo made, find your friends, and tag them. What do you have here? This, again, is Freed-Hardeman promoting Winterfest. And in 2022, you have Chris Seidman, who is well known throughout the United States as using musical instruments as far back as 10 years ago. You have Phil Brookman, who's a regular on Pepperdine, who is an individual who has no problem with women preachers, has no problem with musical instruments, and whatever else. Here's another. This is David Shannon's lectureship, Freed-Hardeman Lectures. And who do you have? David Skidmore. David Skidmore? Well, you know, Johnny, you didn't show us a while ago that David Skidmore was really involved with Pepperdine. Look here. Youth Minister Network 2020. David Skidmore. Pepperdine Church. You see that down there? This is the youth group that we were talking about, the gathering. And look here. Youth Minister Network 2020. Dudley Chauncey, Oklahoma Christian University professor involved in leading your youth right off over the cliff. Rotten. Keynote speaker for Harbor 2022. What is that? Pepperdine Lectureships, the one that Jerry Rushford was going to open up. Phil Brookman is the preacher at Memorial Road. He was brought in to actually speak at Edmond Church of Christ, where Phil Sanders is. It just doesn't get any easier than this. This video is going to be up there, continue to be up on our YouTube. I'll probably name it something to do with Winterfest and Freed-Hardeman, B.J. Clark, things of that nature, so you can see what's going on. You might say, well, I didn't see B.J. Clark. Listen, B.J. Clark was on this lectureship too. Did B.J. say anything about Jeff Walling here? No. Did he say anything about Chris Seidman, who is on Winterfest with Jeff Walling and Phil Brookman, the preacher over at Memorial Road who goes to Pepperdine on a regular basis? No. Didn't say a word. Why? 2015 is a long time ago. B.J. has actually changed because B.J. is now going up the ladder. You know, a little bit church he was speaking at in 2015. This is big time here. He's been on the Bear Valley Lectures himself with noted Professor Stafford North at Oklahoma Christian. Didn't say anything. Basically said, we're all lighthouses. And Stafford North said, we're all in fellowship. This is the kind of thing that you're seeing. Now, let's move to our closing comments here. This is Pepperdine Lecture, 71st Annual Pepperdine Lectureship. Who do you have? Let me just make sure that I can let you see Bruce McCarty. Here's David Shannon. He is bringing in Bruce McCarty to serve as Freed-Hardeman University Minister in Residence. What will you learn from Bruce McCarty? You'll learn how to be on lectureships with Don McLaughlin, musical instruments. Their man, Stephen Maxwell, was at this past Winterfest. He was leading the singing. They have a praise band. He's in charge of the praise band. Who is that? Stephen Maxwell is in charge of the praise band. Don McLaughlin's daughter right down here, Amy, is a woman preacher. They're all on Pepperdine Lectures together. And, you know, on this lectureship, this particular lectureship, Chris Seidman was on this lectureship. Ruben Shelley's on this lectureship. But, you know, the wonderful thing about your alphabetical order, it puts Bruce McCarty right in here with the people that he's involved with. These are his people. These are David Shannon's people. They're showing you that. And I don't know how in the world that people can keep pushing back and say, nah. This is 2014 keynote speakers. Who is this? Patrick Mead. Patrick Mead had a woman preacher named Lauren King over at 4th Avenue in either Brentwood or Nashville, in that particular area, maybe Franklin, Tennessee. Here is Chris Seidman right along with him. See what I'm saying here? Is Ruben Shelley right along with all of these individuals? Chris Seidman, musical instruments. Ruben Shelley, musical instruments. Patrick Mead, women preachers. Look at this. I was actually on the the Harpeth Hill website earlier, and I really couldn't find out where all this music was coming from, mechanical music. And I realized that their services started tonight, sometime about the time that I was doing some of the research, putting it together. And this is the website. It is the Harpeth Hills website. It's right down here on the bottom, and I don't think that I'm really going to make an effort to get that in front of you necessarily. You can probably see it up at the top here. It's right here. Here's Harpeth Hills, and here's Rubel Shelley. Rubel Shelley was the teaching minister there. He retired last year in December. But notice what it says right here. 8:30 a.m. you have a cappella worship, and at 10:45 you have instrumental. So you have these individuals basically going both ways. They want to satisfy everybody. And this is their music praise team. The guy who was speaking in this particular video just said, in a minute our praise team is going to come out, so you can actually see all of them up there. They have no semblance of actually following what the New Testament says. And as I showed you just a minute ago, if they're on the Pepperdine lectures, it's no problem for them to be with individuals who are using musical instruments over in Texas, who are introducing women preachers over in Nashville. There's no problem with all these individuals being together. And who else is with them? They're on the Pepperdine lectures, y'all. This is where Jeff Walling actually works. He is in charge of the youth in Pepperdine. Look at this. You need to get this really settled in your head so that it doesn't end up slipping out. See, where did I go with that? I'm fairly certain that I had him just a minute ago we went right past it. Here he comes. He is Director of Youth Leadership Initiative at Pepperdine University. Who's involved with him? Dudley Chauncey, who is a professor at Oklahoma Christian. Rotten. See how this is going? These individuals are all working together, and they're pretending that they don't. They're hoping that BJ will not talk about this stuff anymore. They're hoping that somehow or other that we won't put it out there. I hope that this other website that is a clone or a mirror that is actually using our YouTube videos that has 2 million views on them, I hope that they'll put some of this stuff up so that it gets more coverage and you'll get to see it in different venues. These individuals are all together. Freed Hardeman is right up in there together, advertising as hard as they can for Winterfest since 2018. And they tried to deny it. These kids just got all nasty on our Facebook, talking about they didn't go in, and they don't know what David Shannon did. Maybe he told them not to go in. That doesn't mean he didn't do whatever he wants to. He's actually promoting it. Why would he not go in? He's now the Freed Hardeman webpage, Facebook webpage is just thrilled to death about that. And so I just don't think you're going to have a hard time making too much out of this. This is the kind of stuff that we're wanting to present to you so that you will be able to be in a position to do this. This is how you reprove. You actually show individuals have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. You give them the information, so you'll be in a position to know that it is in fact the truth, and that it's not just you making it up. I will title this video in such a way that you'll be able to find it, as it will be mixing and mingling, something like that. Freed Hardeman, Winterfest, Pepperdine, BJ Clark, the individuals that are the players. Tonight, we appreciate you being with us and want to always remind you of what you are watching. What does the Bible say? It is a broadcast that is emanating out of Southern Virginia, all over the United States. We have people that are promoting and helping us everywhere. God bless you. We appreciate you so very much. We appreciate you for your financial help that individuals send our way. We're certainly greatly in need of your continued support as we try our very best to shine the light on things that are going. Why? Because we love these individuals. If BJ loved Jeff Walling back then, we love BJ and Jeff Walling and all these individuals, especially your offspring. And we know it's a difficult thing for you to keep yourself and your offspring on the straight and narrow. God bless you. Thank you for watching. What does the Bible say? Always ask for it. What does the Bible say? God bless you.